So that makes sense. You also had something cooking at the same time, a very long cover story in Metro Weekly about how it all ends. How nervous were you as you were finishing drafting that? And how did you? I just got the chance to read it myself before we spoke. So you did write it up through the vice president's announcement, but not through the president's announcement. How did that factor into your final editing, and what, if anything, do you think the dynamics of this past week change the trajectory of where the movement's going?
I mean, what I did back in 2010, I had talked with the executive directors of all of the major LGBT organizations and did a piece called State of Play that looked at where the movement was at organizationally. And this year, looking at where things were at, it seemed to make a lot more sense to get outside of that group of people, because that even though some positions are changing, Chad Griffin's going to be at HRC, Hernan Gradick is now at GLAAD, Aubrey Sarvis is stepping down from Service Members Legal Defense Network. Even though those changes are happening, pretty much people are going to be saying the same sorts of things. So what I did was talked with some people that maybe aren't always represented in media accounts of where the movement's at, and also are on the ground doing work. Talked with the director of programs, Mark Irwin, at the Ruth Ellis Center, which is Detroit's LGBT homeless youth center. Talked with Dean Spade, a law professor and trans activist at Seattle University's law school, and really talked about, like, what is it that we're seeking? What does equality look like? And one of the things that I quickly found is that you can't just ask, how does it end? You need to ask, what is it that you're looking to get to? Because people have very different views. And talking with I mentioned Dean Spade, he talks a lot about the fact that some of the goals of the movement are actually things that have an end result of making life more difficult for some of the most vulnerable people in the LGBT community. When he looks at things like the binational couples and even the DREAM Act, he talked about it in a part of our interview that didn't make it into print. He criticized both of those as being laws that basically, as efforts that basically pick who the most deserving people are. And you have to, I mean, with the DREAM Act, he talked about you have to be a smart student, or you have to want to be supporting our military, or and then in the case of binational couples, you have to, well, have a partner who happens to be an American citizen. Right. And just looking at whether or not goals of the movement are advancing the equality of the more vulnerable people. And I found it really interesting that talking with Bishop Gene Robinson, one of the first out gay religious figures who really got national attention. He's a bishop in New Hampshire in the Episcopal Church. Talked about the fact that looking at efforts that have been made by the gay and lesbian community on trans issues, and really feeling like we are woefully short in addressing trans issues and really including gender issues in the movement as it is.
Yeah, I was talking with WNYC's Brian Lair earlier today, and a couple callers noted how overplayed they felt marriage was, that there were other things to talk about, which is not something I get into that as kind of a detailed question within the gay community sometimes. It's kind of interesting to hear it from a general radio listener. but it is not the only thing. And it was really interesting to read in your piece how one of the ladies you spoke to towards the end was saying she hoped to see Enda sooner. But it's really interesting to see just how much kinetic activity has come just in the past couple of days from the president's announcement, from kind of a renewed interest in Enda, from various things that had seemed a bit dead that seemed to have some motion behind them. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, Senator Harkin announced yesterday that he will be holding an ENDA hearing in the Senate on June 12th.
which I assume you'll be covering closely.
Oh, well, I will be there.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I highly recommend reading your piece for anyone watching. It's a really great wrap-up of where we've come from and how kind of quickly things are happening and where things go from here.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.